We'll basically touch three economic sectors, the primary, secondary, and tertiary. And each of this sector refers to a certain part of the economy. Primary sectors refers to all the activity industries that the end purpose of which consists in exploiting natural resources. Tourism industry in Brazil has been suffered from COVID-19 and had a major negative impact on the national economy because, as we all know, Brazil rely heavily on tourism. In fact, two of the most deteriorating primary sectors are the agriculture and petroleum and oil sectors. So a global crash in the demand for hotels and restaurants, as we all know, has caused the agriculture commodity price drop by 20%. Have the secondary sector, which basically just refers to the manufacturing industry. There are declines across almost all the manufacturing industry. The major reason is that the disruptions in the supply chains and the self-isolation policies for workers. The tertiary sector includes those services that business, leisure, financial institution, hotels, and schools, and also includes transportation. Wild closure for 12 weeks is estimated to have cost 1% of the GDP. UK has suggested that a prolonged closures could be cost up to like 3% of the UK GDP. Important stock market index, the Dow Jones, the Nasdaq fell dramatically until like the US government issued the COVID aid package, a series of policy that they kind of improved. Central banks globally have intervened to ensure that liquidity is maintained and mitigate the economy shocks by all means. There are other tertiary sector industries that has been affected with some simple and monotonic deteriorations, such as tourism, aviation, sports industry. That's, pretty intuitive. Due to the pandemic, many of the physical activities cannot be carried out. It's been reported increasing levels of domestic violence, which includes physical, emotional, and sexual abuse.
Basically, the paper was essentially about some adaptations that Israeli Jews made to kind of continue to worship and honor their faith despite all of the restrictions that there were imposed on them in Israel. Is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So basically, this is a concept in psychology that basically says that you can't get to meet some of these higher order fulfillments, self-fulfillment, self-esteem, without some of the more fundamental ones. So without the fundamental biological needs of food and sleep and water, without feeling secure, and then without feelings of friendship, intimacy, and family connections. And so the paper, kind of describes how a lot of people in Israel are very religious, and religion and religious practice really fulfills this basic need for human connection and belonging. And there were three main things that they allowed as religious leaders to take place. The first was conducting prayer on their balconies. The second was using online video conferencing. So they did sort of make some exceptions to the technology restrictions and allowed online video conferencing of services, and then allowed electronic broadcasting of some of the ceremonies to people that, especially grandparents who weren't able to get out.
In India, what actually happened was we just had 21 days of lockdown. After the 21 days, they started phasing the reopening of various states. The repercussions of that was this concept called reverse migration of labor. So all of these migrant workers ended up going back to the villages, which ended up sort of collapsing a citywide economy. A study by Deloitte actually found that India was ranked at the top for COVID-related anxiety. Tech nationalism also saw a rise, and there was a general unrest in the country. So it's from 7% unemployment before the pandemic, the unemployment rate spiked to close to 27%. And only where small-scale jobs hit, but large companies also started announcing massive layoffs. So Prime Minister did was actually announce a 260 billion relief package. And I think until this point, no other emerging economy has ever pumped out so much of money for a relief package. However, it really did not manage to get back the same levels of economic activities. Close to 300 million young learners in India are impacted due to the pandemic. And only a handful of private colleges and private schools could manage to migrate to a virtual learning environment. But nationwide, there is really no, action on that. While learning has actually gained a lot of traction, and mobile phone access is predominantly available to several Indian households, which and providing universal internet access was not something that the Indian government had sort of taken into priority. Instead, they were looking more into contact tracing. A lot of people from the villages or who actually do come to the cities to do domestic chores and just laundry or washing the dishes and stuff like that around the house. But because of the lockdown, there were actually quite a lot of people who could not physically travel, and the load of doing these domestic chores actually fell disproportionately on the women of the house. Families are accustomed to living together across different generations, which means that they're going to be a big joint family, and working from home may or may not be an immediate effective solution. And technology sometimes is maybe a shared commodity, which